So my mother always said, "You're too loud." My siblings too, you know, we had, for a while on our house on the farm in South Dakota, we had the piano over here and the television over here. Well, this did not work. There was only so much volume they could turn up in the TV before I could still turn up more volume on the piano. So we compromised. I went to the barn and we moved the piano. No, that's where the pigs were. But we did move the piano into another room in the house. That was quite wise, I think. Anyway, because I was the incessant piano kid. My brother, I think I mentioned to you, my younger brother, when it was his time to practice, he would go to the piano sometimes and play one note because he thought that would start the 30-minute timer. Then he'd go back to his cartoons, and then he'd crawl one shoulder at a time, you know, lying on the linoleum floor. Remember linoleum squares? Anyway, that was our... And then, how many minutes left, Mom? And he said, well, I haven't started counting yet, Ron. So anyway, so welcome. And are there any questions, like big things you want to think about? Yeah.
Will there be any pre or lecture before Friday night?
Well, we thought maybe some of the kids would come today, but they're all in class, and they're all getting their pieces ready for Friday night. So I don't think there's going to be anything other than... like you guys can all pray for us. That'll be the pre-lecture, because it's a big put together for just this many weeks into the semester. But it's such a fun show. You can raise your hands gently if you think you're coming Friday or Saturday. I hope you are. It's not the purpose of this course, but it's kind of a bonus for the course, and it's just such a fun show. This last year we did a Halloween theme. In fact, I did a disguise and nobody even knew I was there. I thought, well, that's maybe good. Or pointless, I don't know. So this year we're being a little more formal because we're honoring Rachmaninoff, right? His 150th birthday, which was April 1st. Wouldn't you like to be born on April 1st? My uncle was. Yeah, he was no fool either. Anyway. Okay, so welcome again. We're going to go through a few things. I told Myra I wanted her to stay up here because many of you know this, but her great-grandfather, did I say that correctly? And she'll tell you, she has 2 minutes, okay? And I have 90. Actually, now I have 88. Ah, that's good, 88 keys. Okay, so here we have Myra Schultz. Did I spell it right up there? I hope. Is that look? It doesn't look? I don't mean the person, I mean the writing, the first 2 letters of the yellow. Well, anyway, she's going to tell you just a little bit about her great-grandpa, because this piano came up to Fort Benton, right, on the boat in 1880, we think. Very early 1880s. Yeah, she has to kind of position herself there. And Barbie got to play the grand opening in the Florence Hotel. If you haven't gone, you can go see the piano. You can't play it because it's all covered up nicely. And when I got to see it, it was just before I was leaving town. And it hadn't been tuned like in, I don't even know how many years, quite a few, ever. Well, I wish every piano from 1880 sounded this good. And I'm going to play a little bit, and then it'll be on your PowerPoint when you get home. How many of you have been able to get something at home? You know, I hope. If you haven't, it's okay, but that's where you get the real knowledge by going through these at home, because you get to go through everything. That sounds better than this because it's an iPhone and it's 80. Yeah. And that's the Rachmaninoff cadenza that we're talking about. Think of it, not most pianos from 1880 don't even play. And it's square, it's not this shape, it's a square grand. The strings run parallel to the keys. Isn't that interesting? And the reason it's still playing is because Myra didn't wear it out. She'll tell you about that. It was her brother who practiced all the time. So there were only 2 of us in the Florence building that day. I had permission to open up the piano, so I did, and then pretty soon somebody comes up. So she held the video camera. She has the boutique downstairs. I don't remember her name, a lovely person. And she said her daughter was taking piano lessons. I don't remember from whom. And then maybe it was a week later that Barbie played, right, for the grand opening. So if we get some of that video, maybe we can show a little bit of that. But go ahead and tell us a little. It's such a story. There you are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Well, as Steve said, my great-grandfather, Francis Lyman Worden, who was one of the founders of Missoula, imported this piano to Missoula, up the Missouri to Fort Benton, and then by mule train across to Missoula on the Mullen Road. So it's been in our family ever since. And my great-aunt gave the piano to my mother, and my brother was more successful at music lessons than I was, and so he got it when she died. He took it to Post Falls, Idaho, and had it over there and played it and whatnot. And after he died, his widow said, this piano belongs back in Missoula. So I won't go into all the places that I tried to get the piano situated. But finally, my friend Jim Harmon did a Montana history thing about the piano, and someone in the Kiwanis Club picked it up, went to the manager of the Florence Hotel and said, this piano is available. And so the manager contacted the owner of the Florence Hotel, who lives in Dallas, Texas. And a couple days before Christmas last year, Thomas called me, and he said, I own the Florence Hotel. We would love to have your piano in our hotel. And I was like, this is the best Christmas present ever. And Marianne knows how hard I worked to find a place for this piano. So my sister-in-law and my sister and I arranged to have the piano transported to Missoula. And fortunately,
Not by mule train, though.
no, the legs come off, and so it's just a big box. And it made it into the freight elevator at the Florence by inches. I mean, the manager of the hotel actually did a mock-up in cardboard to see whether or not it would fit in the elevator, because otherwise he would have had to bring a lift into the lobby and lift it up to the mezzanine where it is. So Thomas spared no expense and put on an absolutely beautiful party. The mayor declared that day Francis Lyman Worden Day. We had, people spoke, but best of all, Barbie played. Barbie and I go way, way, way back.
But not to the mule train. Not that far back.
I mean, look at this audience. They're all my age. But anyway, we had a wonderful party, and like I said, Barbie played. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed playing the piano. It's from 1880, and they don't make pianos like that anymore. And so you sort of put yourself back then and launched into some romantic period music like Chopin and Liszt and all of these great pianists. The piano, actually, in the development of the instrument itself, the piano was developed constantly since its origin in the early 1700s. And it was only in the 1800s when it started to get the pedal, the use of the sustaining pedal, and they made bigger pianos, and Liszt was the one that started giving solo recitals on a piano. Nobody had ever done that before. And so people started getting pianos in their homes, which hadn't been done before either. Most pianos were in royalty or homes of very rich people. So the piano really started to come out in the 1800s, and the piano at the Mercantile is a perfect example of the best piano at its peak in 1880.
We think that it was the first grand piano in Missoula, but there were really 1880, right? 81, 82 possibly. Not much of Missoula yet, right, as a town, but your great-grandpa was one of the founders, as you said, and your maiden name was?
Well, my maiden name was
Wasn't it?
Schultz, but my mother was a Worden.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have a chance, go to the Florence Hotel, go up to the mezzanine. You'll see a plaque about the history of the piano. You'll see the mayor's proclamation, and there's a warning, don't put any food or drink on this piano.
And if you are playing it, that nice lady from the boutique will come up and take a video, and then we'll show that next week. So
Her name
practice first.
Her name is Kelly Rossler.
Kelly, okay, she was great. All right, guys, let's go on. We can't really do 20 questions, but we only did one. Is there another question quickly before? Yeah, please.
How many pianos invented on the stage here for pianismo?
There'll be 5, and they'll all be grand pianos. 3 of them are coming in from Spokane. Well, 2 at least, and maybe 1 from one of our classrooms. Yeah. Tomorrow's moving day. Yeah.
Hello. Wait. So the online folks can hear you.
Oh, this better be a good question then.
So the Poco Pianissimo.
Yeah.
So that is Saturday at 1 o'clock, is that right?
Is it 1 or 1:30? I don't.
1 or 1:30.
One. It's in my script
And
here.
yeah, so
Go
somebody
ahead.
behind me just said it's for little kids and maybe old kids who don't want to drive in the dark.
Yeah.
So so is it going to be overrun with small children? You know.
Well,
monkey
depends what
jumps?
you mean by overrun. Sometimes one kid is an overrun.
This is
But it's usually like 50 kids and their parents. You know, there's some crowd control, but it's really fun. It's a shorter show because the attention span a little bit, and so we don't do an intermission. And there's just 40, 50 minutes show. Kids love it, and it's great for people who don't want to drive in the dark in the evening. I think the price is the same for you guys because it is a fundraiser, but I think the kids are all. Actually, we should charge them double. I used to say, children under 3 are $250 for my concerts. Yeah. Anyway, anything else? Yeah. Are we okay? You can ask questions. Raise your hand. You might get a tired arm because I'll be wearing my music glasses after all. Then I don't see you anymore very much. Okay. So here we are, and you can go to the grizztix.net, avenue.net. You know, it's on your slide. Go look at home. And did you get postcards? Maybe you're not all on that list. Anyway, if you didn't, be sure you do for next year. And there's a link at the very end. And then I was playing this as you came in. It's so beautiful. I'll just give you a reminder, partly to make sure everything's working. This is in a cathedral, Orthodox. And it's a choir of 8 singers. No vibrato. It's like the Russian chant style. Likely Rachmaninoff wrote this piece. Notice the arch. The arch is the strongest form, musically and otherwise. Then the second verse is just Alleluia, 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 same notes and everything. So you'll listen at home again, enjoy it. So 1910 it was composed. Yeah, and Chechnikov, when you read a little bit about him, you find out, not surprisingly, in 1917, the revolution, 18, whenever the transition to USSR, Soviet Union, and then he pretty much had to write secular music, right? Because the church was pretty much suppressed. And so he lived until 1945, I believe, or 44 possibly, a little bit longer than Rachmaninoff. So they were close in age. And I don't think they were friends as such, but they would have certainly known each other as prima musicians in Russia. Here, that great picture, I wonder where the treats are. Like, shouldn't they have had coffee and something on that picnic table there? This is on Lake Lucerne. This was it's a clever name. Did anybody see that name? Senar, we would say Senar, or Senar, and maybe S-E-N-A-R. So it stood for Sergei, S-E-R-G-E-I, the first two letters of Sergei Rachmaninoff, the first two letters of Natalie Rachmaninoff. So S-E-N-A and then R for the Rachmaninoff. So that was the name of their villa. And it's been said that it's just been incorporated now into, I believe, it's some kind of property of Russia now, maybe. At least Putin was trying to get it, and I think the Swiss said no, and maybe for good reason, and it's kind of worked out, but you can research that and help me to know more about that. But it's still there, and it's a museum, I believe now, of the Rachmaninoffs. And next time you're in Lucerne, Switzerland, Lucerne, you can go. This I wanted you to hear because it seems like you've been hearing all this serious music of Rachmaninoff, and I think we have just enough time to play this. It's 3 minutes and a few seconds, because actually I played this much slower than he does. When I was a sophomore in high school, Barbie and I have been talking about some of the pieces we learned when we were kids, and the pigs seemed to enjoy it on the farm. I had an audience of 40 instantly. Anyway, so this is a piece, it's called Humoresque, so it's very creative, like impish almost, kind of a other side of Rachmaninoff. It'd be where he was playing with his two daughters. Some of you might have looked at that video I posted on the first class. I hope they're working, but you can go in yourself on YouTube and look in Rachmaninoff video, and then you find this little 8 minutes of video of him with his family and his daughters, and they're dancing around and things, and because it's just home videos, it's not professional. And here's a piece that he might have played for them because it would have been so fun to hear. So let's see if that comes up. Did you hear this? You didn't have a sense of humor. A little bit louder. And this is one of those Ampico rolls, the piano roll. This is known as the transition middle section of a piece, A-B-A form. So this is the contrasting lyrical form, part of the form, and then it comes back to the opening. Isn't that cool? So that's his playing. And you know, it's possible that they ramped up the speed just a little bit, because with the old player pianos, you had that option, right? You could just say fast, medium, but I don't think he recorded it, you know, sorry, I don't remember the notes now, but to start, he could have recorded it like that and suddenly, so I doubt it, because he was phenomenal. But you saw the hands of Zalotti, cousin Zalotti here that one day, and his hands were at least that size. They were both 6'5" and 6'6". So there's some thoughts that maybe there was something in the family, like all these cousins marrying cousins, and maybe there was something going on there, genetic things. Bach married his second cousin, I think, wasn't it? Maybe. Yeah, the first wife. Okay, so so we talked a little bit last week just about, and I didn't bring the music with me, but how, you know, if you just play it kind of pretty. And then you say, okay, that's nice, now let's hear you next year after you practiced a little bit more. And then the kids come in and they start going, let's see. And even this harmony is sort of wrenching a little bit. It's called the diminished chord, and this is the half diminished chord, the triple hot fudge sundae. And it's partly because there are 12 of them, and there are only 3 of this other one, because these are all the same. And you don't have to know, there's no tests, so don't worry about it. But you hear a little bit that sort of wistful kind of yearning quality in the sound instead of just plain old C major. So today we're gonna, ooh, this is handy, catch the chord on the piano bench. So I'll tuck it in, right? Okay, I got my surrogate mom in the back here, Michelle. Yay! Applause for Michelle. She's keeping me honest. Okay, so we're gonna think, we talked about this last week, our task, interestingly, I said it this way, I tell my students through the years, our task is to convey meaning, not just to play the notes prettily somehow. And so when I was 5 years old, I didn't realize my teacher, was probably in South Dakota, and for Barbie, a different named teacher, was telling me, Stephen, it's not enough to play the notes, you have to say something. That's the way she reminded me when I went to college and came back and saw her. I graduated from her in the 7th grade to a different teacher, as did Barbie to George Hummel, who taught here at the U. And then I got my teacher in South Dakota who was teaching at the U, and I believed everything she said, partly because I knew she could kick me out anytime I was not paying tuition. She could fire me in a moment. So, and she was great, and I just believed everything she said. But Mrs. Jeffrey, my first teacher, said, it's not enough to play the notes, you have to say something. And that's the privilege of making music. So that's what we seek to do. So Rachmaninoff, I found out, said it in a little different way. So today we're going to talk a little bit, and Barbie's going to point for now up. She's my pointer. Do you want to practice pointing at certain notes? So you're going to see, she's going to point to the melody, which is in the right hand. And here's the notes. And then it goes on into a minor key suddenly. But it starts out in major. And D-flat major, for some reason, is one of the richest keys. Speaking of rich, you can make a contribution to Molly. Okay. This ad was brought to you by Molly. Okay. So anyway, so there's all kind of wrong notes in that melody, so-called wrong notes. They don't fit with the harmony at all. So if I played only the notes, or Chopin had written only the notes that fit with the harmony, it would have sounded more like this. Something like that. It's pretty. But it's these so-called sour notes, if you will. They're not mistakes. They just don't fit. Here comes a wrong note. That one. And this is wrong. Oh, sorry. So if I said yes, no, it's like computers. Ones and zeros. So you have yes, no, yes. Can you point to the melody only? So starting again, first note of the melody. Yes, no, yes, 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 yes. No, no. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no. But then yes. Does that kind of make sense? And so those not wrong notes at all, but those beautiful dissonant notes, we call them dissonances, are somehow the notes that really get our hearts. And so we lean on them in some way. We don't necessarily bump them, but we, yes, no, yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, no. He could have gone, but it's okay, but not pretty, so not as pretty. So, and then we call it resolves. And then no, yes, no, yes. And here's a big, he could have gone here, but he goes kind of like grapefruit. You like it and grimace at the same time. Wrong note, right note. Okay, so that's the idea. So harmonies can do sort of the same thing. So these sort of kind of, I've been showing you the, see, I have to think. That one. And the next chord might be like this. So that just tugs at you, and then this one, by comparison, is resolved. It's like a little skirmish with your friend. It's not like what's going on in the world right now. That's a different thing. But just, between loved ones, you have these little yin and yangs, the zen of marriage or of friendships. So I think in interest of time, I want to keep moving on, and maybe that will happen as a performance, or maybe not, because there's so many things hope you're okay with this. It's not a theory course, but it's, I think, fun to know a little of these things. So this is a great treat. Dalton, just wave your hand up there in the front row. Dalton has been collecting these. He has maybe all but, let's say, 30 at the most of the, multiply, let's see, 1883. So let's say there were 12 editions that year. So 12, and then 1883 so there's 17 years to 1900, and there's 57 more. So that's 74 years. Is that right? 74 years of Etude magazine. And multiply that by 12, so 800 and 900 of these that he has in his living room. So we're all going to break and enter and help ourselves. Anyway, and he's going to give these. We're making a plan to the Music Teachers National Association in Cincinnati, with some yet to be determined. Excuse my morning phlegm here. We're going to try to get them digitized in the national office, because this was the journal of the MTNA for all those years before they started saying, well, we should have our own journal, and this actually ceased in 1957. And that's about the time a magazine called Clavier took its place. clavier for the keyboard. Claviers Bach wrote for the clavier. So you get a few pages of ads in case there's something you want to buy. I'm afraid this little bit, I'm sorry, I shouldn't even touch it. It's staple maybe, but we'll work on that. So here's Rachmaninoff's article. So Rachmaninoff came to the United States. I'm going to set this up here. Wow. In 1909 and 10, and he went back to Europe in 1910 in February. So this happened then to be the article in March of 1910. So they just said, well, he's in town, let's have an interview with, and he did not like to interview. So I have some of that on, I made some, you have to go home to get all of this. Here's some of our dissonances. I'm going to just quickly tell you that what I was doing with that first E flat was, so that note is in between two notes that are part of the chord. So the note in between is called a passing tone because it's passing from one harmonic note to the wrong note is in between them. So it's called a passing tone. So when I learned that at the conservatory, or probably before, I learned that all we were worried about at that age was just passing. But passing tones was fun to learn about. And then an appoggiatura is a note it goes to the wrong note. So it goes, instead of going, it goes past that note and comes back to it. And then it goes past the right note and comes back to it. And it goes past the next one and comes back. And quite often they go down instead of up, but that doesn't matter. It's called an appoggiatura. It's a nice Italian term. So when you practice that and then people say, do you speak Italian? You say, yes, appoggiatura. And they'll be convinced. And so you've got those kinds of things. There are neighboring tones where you're going, and the D sort of fits with the next harmony, so that's not a good example, but wrong note, right note, wrong note, it's called an upper neighbor. If you go to the next note below it, it's a lower neighbor. And this is not to be confused with like uppity neighbors and low life neighbors. It's a musical term, upper neighbor and lower neighbor. And so those are just things that you learn about in music, and then you start making it happen. And so when I was doing that Rachmaninoff, whatever, maybe the B natural was an appoggiatura that resolved upwards, or things like that. So you don't have to know all those things, but you start to feel them. And Rachmaninoff writes about this. And this is something you can, again, listen to the whole piece at home. This is a wonderful pianist who plays all kinds of Rachmaninoff and others as well. And that note's going to resolve to the next one, that B flat, beautiful. Maybe a little here. Yeah, thank you. So I can sort of tell you that the thing I'm trying to learn to do is sort of move between being your MC and your teacher and your whatever, and then your performer, because there's two things. Normally I take a nap during a performance, so let's just do it now. And then this other thing is you got to gather all that internal energy so that you can really convey the meaning. Otherwise it's sort of like, did I remember to shut off the microphone, or all this stuff going on. Sort of like talking about a Shakespeare play and then jumping into the role, to be or not to be. Well, I don't know. So I'm learning a little bit to do that, but it's an interesting journey. So here's the cover of that magazine, beautiful magazine, and I mention here that Beethoven did not pose. he was long gone. So they had these kind of things, but notice the square grand piano right in there, where I'm wiggling. Barbie can point to it with her red pointer. There we go. So that's not unlike, the pianos were pretty much, they fit it in living rooms. And in Europe, the space was limited. Most people like Beethoven didn't have a palace. He was sometimes treated royally, but other times not. Anyway, so thank you, Dalton. Okay, so here's an article from that actual issue. So this was right after Rachmaninoff had his first American tour, that the Etude magazine got to have him come and interview with them in the Etude magazine. And over on the right, Barbie will point, over here it says the list, that's the list is the end of the preceding sentence, but he's talking about character. So you're looking for the character of a piece. So a Bach piece will have a different character, probably from a Beethoven stormy, kind of on the edge of romantic. Beethoven was boundless in spirit. Bach was very organized and lovely. Everything was just perfection. Bach could just spin a fugue, like we'd all have to work for our music theory assignment to write 8 measures of a fugue, but he was writing several a day probably. So you can read that, but let's read through it quickly. Consequently, the student must seek to give each piece a different character, each piece from each other a different character. So find the character of the piece. And if you fail to convey, there's that word, this impression. If the player fails, each blah, 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 as an individual, okay, whatever. And then he loved the playing of Joseph Hoffman, who also studied with Franz Liszt and was very unique in each piece. He gave each piece a special character. And so Dalton was pointing this out to me. We had lunch together and we were talking about something. And so then Rachmaninoff on the bottom there, real musical understanding. And he said, a lot of teachers want, go read about Beethoven and then you'll play his piece better. And Rachmaninoff saying, no, it's okay. You go learn about Beethoven, that's fine. But what is in the music must be discerned. And it's there for us to figure out, not without guidance when we're students, but also as teachers to help our students get there. So that you're finding, let's read what it says, the student must first of all, see, the main points of musical relationship in a composition. He must understand what it is that gives the work unity, cohesion, force, or grace, and must know how to bring out these elements. So that's just a little clip among these articles. So he's talking about these things. And you might, if you've done some of the readings, you might have come across, even if it's just Wikipedia, sometimes you come across this little part where his mother came home one day and he wasn't supposed to get to touch the piano at all. He didn't know anything yet, and this is a family instrument. And his grandfather was a fine pianist, and his father was an amateur pianist. And so his mom came home. I think she was his first teacher, so obviously she knew the piano. But I think she also sang. Anyway, he was playing some things by ear. And somehow he got permission through the nanny, let's call, or the teacher, kind of resident, not the piano teacher. He didn't have Anna yet, or Netskaya, or whatever, however you say her name. But he was home, and he convinced the helper, the person who kept the house, to get to practice for a little bit. And so he played, and he could play by ear. He had a fabulous ear. And pretty soon he was playing this piece for a singer. Maybe it was his mom now. I read this some weeks ago. And it wasn't the exact notes of the accompaniment, but there was not one wrong note. Everything was correct. All of the harmonies were correct. And he was 4. So, I was playing by ear when I was 2.5, I'm told. I don't remember it. And the pigs liked it. But anyway, but I could play all the Christmas carols by the time I was 3, because that's what you heard the most on the farm, I guess. So probably I go. And pretty soon, I probably couldn't reach a pedal yet, but it was 2 hands. And somehow I got that figured out. And I heard my sister, 4 years older than I, practicing her piano lesson. I think there was a little hole called the keyhole in the door. I'd listen, and then I'd go in and I'd crank out whatever it was. So pretty soon they decided I should have some piano lessons or I'd be a disaster. And so I got Mrs. Jeffrey. But here you're going to find this wonderful magazine, and these articles. This is from the next magazine. So the cover that I just showed you is of Beethoven, but Rachmaninoff moved to the United States in 1918, and you know a little bit the story that he had to get out of Russia because the Soviets, in effect, they didn't call themselves yet Soviets, confiscated their estates and their properties. They were invited to live in a little apartment someplace. And so he had 9, I've read 9, and then I've also read 10, doesn't matter, concerts in Scandinavia in 1917, I believe, into 1918. And so he got a visa, and he and his wife and the 2 kids, the 2 daughters, all moved to Scandinavia. And I can't remember, Finland, I think, for a little while. Then Dresden, they had already been in Dresden from 1906 somehow. At various times he was in Europe concertizing, so it was all in keeping with what he did. But by 1918, they came to New York. They took a boat in November of 1918. It was an 11-day journey across the sea. It was before World War I, as we came to call that first Great War. And they got to New York, and that's where they settled, and they kind of created a little kind of miniature Russian thing for themselves. Ended up in Beverly Hills, California eventually, and there's more to that than I can go into or even know. But you can look at that, and this is in that 1919. So he had done his first tour. Look at this at the top there. He arrived in New York in November 1918, setting immediately on a 36 concert tour, which ended in April. That's 36, grueling concerts, but the guy had this massive technique and ability and could do it, and he had to raise his family, and that's how he did it, because he knew he couldn't support himself as a composer, because that's a whole different thing. In fact, you could say most composers probably don't make it just on composing. So this you can read on your own time, but there's this one very interesting thing. Here's this magazine that Dalton has most of the copies, and of these 74 years, and there's, in this one, this is the lead page. You have several pages of ads, and then you get to front page, like the front page of the New York Times. And at the top, it talks about this is going to be Rachmaninoff's dedicated several articles in this, and they said it's the first time we've ever dedicated one issue of Etude to a single composer overall. There were other articles, but there was more than one article about Rachmaninoff in here. And then right underneath this, and I just was overwhelmed to read this because I knew a little bit, but almost nothing. And that's a good place to start for knowledge. And so it says, a magnificent gift. And let's see if we can read a little bit of Augustus D. Juilliard. And he went to the Met every week in New York as a retired guy. He was from Canton, Ohio. He should have helped Oberlin Conservatory in Ohio. And he left in his will, nobody knew it was going to happen, somewhere between $5 and $20 million was all going to go in 1919. The will had been opened April 25th, he died. And then this money was, they thought, nobody knew yet, that maybe it was going to go to the Metropolitan Opera, and maybe some of it did. $25 million or $20 million in 1919 is probably coming up on $1 billion now. It's a big chunk. And so there was something in New York City called the Institute. Down here, you can point the bottom there, Barbie. Whoops. And the Institute of Musical Art was what became Juilliard. And when I was in New York on my sabbatical in 1988, living just around the corner from what used to be the Institute of Musical Art, it became the Manhattan School of Music when Juilliard became Juilliard and moved down. And again, there's phases here, but Juilliard is now in Lincoln Center right next to Avery Fisher Hall and all the different names in the Metropolitan Opera and the New York City Ballet and all of that complex of arts in 67th, is that kind of 67th Street? Is that where the Lincoln Center is, on 67th? Right, and now there's a high-rise dormitory for the kids that are studying at Juilliard. And it isn't just, we thought of it as the Juilliard School of Music forever, but it's called the Juilliard School of the Performing Arts, because they also ballet and dance and jazz, and not that jazz isn't still music, but just everything is kind of, as is in Europe, they have the performing arts, they call it in Europe a lot. So this is the Institute of Musical Art on Claremont Avenue, up by Grant's Tomb, up by the Hudson River, up by Riverside Church on the west side, Upper West Side. So that's just kind of fun that was, the seeds were being planted in this issue, right? $20 million is going to go somewhere in New York. So when Alexander Zloty was teaching at the Juilliard School from 1922, Alexander being the first cousin of Rachmaninoff, he was not yet teaching at Juilliard because it didn't become Juilliard till some of this money came in. And Juilliards earned their money through textiles. It seems like textiles is a big deal because if you know a little bit about Florence, Italy, and the Medici family, they were textiles. You know, there were all these sheep roaming around in the pastures of Italy and the hillsides, and they needed to do something with all that wool. Well, somebody's got to weave it, warp and woof. We always thought woof was what our dogs said on the farm, but if we'd gotten into the textile thing. So this is something I found in the middle this is online. These are all online, so I'm giving you can go and read every article in any of these magazines. So I don't know that this exists anywhere. I looked for it everywhere and I can't find it. So this is 1919. I don't know if Rachmaninoff did it for Etude magazine, but it's a duet version of the prelude that Barbie played for you. So the famous one, the most famous one that Rachmaninoff thought he hated. Those beautiful chords and those beautiful harmonies are just tugging at us all the way through. And you're going to hear pianissimo, you're going to hear 4 people at 2 pianos playing. So there's that arrangement. I think, and there's also a 2-piano arrangement for 2 people. So there's just, what are you going to do with what is one of the most famous pieces on earth? You're going to find multiple ways to play it. So this is a duet that I don't know that it's been published. I really don't. If somebody finds it, you've earned I'll pay your tuition for the Mali course. No, it's 1 piano, it's a piano duet. It's just secondo and primo. Do you want to, no, I don't have this. I just have it up there. Do you want to look up there? You play the secondo, and we'll just look up there and whatever happens, but.
I'll play the left-hand page and see.
Let's go a little slow. And it's harder than you think because if you played the piece, you want to play everything, right? So now you get to choose. But I have a feeling that Rachmaninoff either approved it or did it himself.
Every time you'd get a music magazine as a child, and even now, you'd turn to where they put the music. They'd usually put 1 piece or 2 pieces in for pianists to play. Did you used to do that?
Okay, can you hear Barbie, kind of?
Did you do that, Tom?
Yeah, I did.
What you do is you'd look for the piece and see if you could play it.
Yeah, my great aunts would have these Etude magazines, and we'd leaf through it, and even they had a pump organ, so you're going like, sure. Nothing, no pedal. Where's the pedal? Well, that's what you do, this thing, That.
Okay, I'll play.
Okay, just very slow, though. No, something changed, but that's all right.
What should be E?
No, it's E. Or maybe, it doesn't matter. But you get the idea. Maybe Barbie and I will learn it for next time. It'll be our graduation exercise. All right. We'll put the tip bowl up here and everything.
That was our best.
That was our first attempt. Okay, so it's like riding side saddle, right? Sitting on the side of the horse. Okay, so alrighty. So that was very interesting to find. And then this, guess what? I told you I was going to learn more than you guys. And so this is, look at carefully, to Monsieur Anton Orensky at the top above. The dedication is to his theory teacher, basically. And there's a story about Orensky was sick for 2 classes, and this other guy, Taneyev, came in, and they just adored him. He was so fun and so nurturing and so positive and everything. And then they said, sort of like, oh no, Hessler's back. Orensky got well, and he came back to teach, and then they were all, oh, okay, well, we're still going to learn even if we don't like it. But he had the wisdom to dedicate something to Orensky, so that probably didn't hurt his graduation ceremonies. But look at the editor, and you go down a little bit below, that right there in Zalote, you see the name. So this is his cousin who did the edition of this piece. And so that's an education in itself, after you get to know. I didn't put the whole piece in here, but I wanted to talk about something that you'll see, and then you'll hear. And you've already heard the piece, so I just have to get it a little bit here. Da-da-da. So this is what he wrote in the very last measures of, sorry, go back one, Barbier Point. Okay, on the bottom of the right-hand page. Okay, and you get these wonderful, here's the key of the piece, is C sharp. But I've been telling you about yearning, so he could have ended the piece right there. And that would have been it. That's fine, because that's how it ends. But it doesn't end for several more measures, because he makes us yearn, he makes us want it. So and it's called avoiding the tonic. The tonic is not gin and tonic, but the tonic is the tonal center of the key. So he should have done this, and that would have been the end of it. But instead he does this. And all of these chords have a C sharp in them, because that's the home bass. But he avoids, so this is his harmonic genius. And I'm just going to play the chords. In fact, I'll put down the middle pedal, which holds those C sharps, and then I'll play the chords. And then the next one is, and the next one's different from that. And each one of them is unique. And finally, this penultimate harmony is the triple hot fudge sundae, the delicious half-diminished chord. And maybe Rachmaninoff made a thing of this, because usually you get, and he did, no, why not this? So I'll play the last. Whoops. I got to change my glasses, sorry. And here comes that delicious. So this is my little, I'd never quite put it together this way, but that wasn't just a trick. It was just exploring all the different harmonies that can surround a single note, kind of. And that was maybe not Orensky's idea in his theory class, but Rachmaninoff's great ear. So then if you take that idea of the same notes with different harmonies going around, you get, so the prelude in 1892 was, I'm going to change my glasses at this point. Ooh, I don't know, I took them out. She's going to find them. I carefully set them aside someplace. Where did I set them? I need my glasses to find my glasses. Okay, so then you take that, we'll just do it, we'll go with it. And then, so we avoided the tonic, and then we finally got there, tonic being the home base. So here in Rachmaninoff's concerto is the opposite, where you go with the chord first and then the low note. So every one of those chords contains the note C, which is the home bass. But it isn't the C. He doesn't give. He doesn't give us a C, he gives us an F. What does F have to do with anything other than failing music theory when you're in college? So you get. So you get that kind of, and it's called a harmonic progression. It's so beautiful. Who wouldn't do it? But Rachmaninoff thought of it and did it, and it's just haunting. And when you sing a hymn in church, if you sing the Amen, and you usually do it, Amen, because this harmony contains the home key. But if I go this, and then half of the church won't sing because they go, they don't want to get off that note somehow. So they say, well, let's use this chord. Or if it's in a minor key, so he's using something that's called the subdominant because it's below the home key by 5 notes. Doesn't matter. You won't fail the course because you're not taking it for a grade. So all of that is sort of saying amen. And you finally get the tonic down here in the second line, which is the start of the whole thing. So Chopin did it when he wrote his G minor ballade, so this is 50 years earlier. He did it lots of other times too. But he didn't start the key of the piece. He made us wait for it. He started, and that has nothing to do with, but it's the same relationship of subdominant, but it's more complicated than that. But he avoids giving you, he just makes it less obvious. And there's a wrong note going to the right note. Yes, no. Upper neighbor, lower neighbor, not uppity neighbor and low life neighbors. And so everything is this giant question, musically speaking. It's encoded into the harmonies and the notes. And you're just sitting there listening and you're thinking, I wonder where this is going. And if you have that feeling, then you've got the right feeling because that's what you're supposed to feel. This sort of ambivalence or the ambiguous nature of not giving away the secrets, kind of keeping them a little bit, Germans say geheimnisvoll, secretly, inwardly. So it's kept for a moment. So that is a wonderful moment in music. And I thought we would do, the second theme is foreshadowed. Barbie, why don't you come up with your score, and we're going to just find some things together. Barbie is good. Yeah, please.
Yeah. The 1 chord is the tonic, the 4 chord is the subdominant, and the 5 chord is the dominant. Am I right?
Right, and those,
And
one
if you-
is Roman numeral 1.
Yeah. And
not
if you
number.
ever look at early Baroque music, they have what's called figured bass. And if you ever look at modern guitar music, it also has figured bass. Because the chord progressions are, the notes of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And basically, most pieces are using only 3 chords, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. And in the Chopin piece with the D flat,
I know, I
that
took 'em
whole
out
first line was a
someplace.
D flat chord. It was a 1 chord. And the same with the Rachmaninoff. With the low F, that's a 4 chord in the key of C minor. The piece is in C minor, so he resolves the C minor in the second line, the 1 chord. So he's going from a 4 chord, and then when you see the G, the very last note of the first line, that's the 5 chord, and then the 1 chord is the C minor there. So he's using the 1, 4, and 5 chord again. Those are the 3 most popular chords in every piece of music, especially popular music. Sometimes popular music has nothing except a melody with your choice, 1, 4, or 5 chords. 1, 4, 5 chord, play a 1 chord in the key of C minor. Play a 4 chord. No, play it.
Oh, play it.
Go up to the 4th note.
Okay.
Yeah, and the 5 chord. And back to 1. That's right. Now in D flat major, which was a Chopin, play the 1 chord, play the 4 chord, play the 5 chord, and play the 1 chord. And some variation of each of those chords accounts for all those other notes. Basically. I'm done.
Okay, we'll have the test after the class. So just a couple little things. So you're going to play rehearsal number 4. I think we have the same. If not, it's before the second theme. I guess we don't have, so it's going to start. There it is, rehearsal 4.
Okay.
So she's now the orchestra, and I'm the solo pianist.
This
Yeah,
is way too low for me. Can I put it up
sure.
a
Just
little bit? Thank you.
these are known as ejector seats. The kids that don't practice just jump, wakes them right up. So she is hinting, the orchestra is giving the clue of what the second theme is going to be. The first theme is this. And then we kind of go along and we get through that, and
Let me play that with you. Okay.
okay. Right, and that just sounds like, right, to E flat major, and that's the wonderful parent key. Yes. That's very rich chord. Okay, so then we get, so play that, just that part.
I think it's a C. Oh, I see. That's right.
Right, and she's playing that, and then the orchestra. So that's a quick journey to the second theme. But she played this, yes, she's still playing this. So, and then I come in. It's genius, because he said, I'm having trouble getting from the first theme to the second theme. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. So even with all of his genius, he had to figure these things out, right? So then you hear it, okay? And a few measures later, she's going to go. And first time it's half notes. So he's hinting at things yet to come. And then later. In the meantime, that sets me up. So then it becomes a duet with the piano playing. You play your right hand, I'll play my right hand. Start with 1. And then, and this is so rich you can't even talk about it almost, so I won't. But I will. But he could have just written, but he would tie certain notes, and then that comes in, and here comes that theme. And then is this. So he's using the material. So when you're hearing it, you're saying, oh, it's so pretty. But if he'd given you random different themes everywhere, there's no unity. So he talks about it in that little slide I showed you, the cohesion, connecting material, everything is related. And it comes out of his genius, yes. And then he does, I'm going to just show you in my part, single line. Instead of coming down. Now he's going to take us on. So he takes small, Beethoven did this, it's called foreshortening, taking a big idea, like, and then, maybe different instruments are playing that, it's called a little motive, and so he takes just this little part of the theme, which is, and that's an upper neighbor, by the way. The wrong note coming back to the right note, kind of. And so then you get, and you think heaven opened, and you don't know that your music theory, but you sort of do because you feel it. So all of that is happening. I want to go to the next page. Is it 10 in your case? So I start at the top of the page. So it's like pair skating when you watch the Olympics, and one is doing this and the other one's guiding, and then they're up in the air, one of them, and twirling over, and it's all kind of well integrated writing, and so you get, and this business, that's sort of the wrong note, so going to the right note. And then she comes in. So she has her own little passing tone, wrong note, right note. And so there's a German word for this whole thing when you go. And you have a falling interval of either a half step or a whole step. I want to go on, Barbie, to show just before we play. Page 14 is the Pio Vivo, and it has a whole bunch of these. So, and then she is, and she has, and then I go, and the German word is Seufzer. Seufzer, and should we all say it? Seufzer. It's a tricky word. The S is pronounced like a Z, so it's Seuf, And then the Z is pronounced like a TS, sir, like yes, sir, yes, sir, and no, sir. And Seufzer means sighing. So if you just said it in English, you'd say sighing, and she has an upward sigh, sighing, sighing, crying, crying, hopefully not lying, unless it's reclining. So can you play just your... And the zer is lighter than the zoif, so you don't say zoifzer, you say zoifzer. So you say louder, softer, louder, softer. So let's do that together. Is it? It could be, yeah, it does it right. That's correct. And it's sort of also something called call and response. She's calling like, Stephen, have you made your bed yet? Mother, sorry, breakfast, school bus. And so it's this dialogue. So things like that are going on all the time in the music, and you just get to enjoy it. So he does a whole bunch of things where he combines the themes. And like, let's see, I have to start. This is page 22. So all of this is what goes up must come down, what goes up must come down, Newton's law, but also the arch. And so that is based on, and then that comes down. So there's all these things that are knit together into the texture of the piece, and he knows that he's doing it. Or here, I'm going to go back. There's this similar passage earlier that, let's see if I can find it right quick here. Yes, page 10 again. So I play. And this is exact. It's hidden inside, but it's exactly. Isn't it genius? You see, this is why his music will endure. It's not just like pretty melodies. It's worked out, but it's not worked out like with, he had to work on that passage into the E-flat major from C minor, and that was okay because composers do that. But he heard most of this. It's this burst, in a way, of inspiration after 3 years of that kind of, what am I going to do with my life? And there it was, brewing inside of him. So I think for Come Better or Worse, we're going to play this for you, this first movement. And maybe you listen for some of these things a little bit, but don't. If that makes sense, just let it come to you. Okay, so maybe we'll go ahead and I'm going to leave her lid down not because she should be softer or louder, because she's the orchestra, but because it's a soloist in an orchestra. And if both pianos are wide open, then you don't even know what you're listening to sometimes, just because it's not a flute and a clarinet and an oboe. So that kind of helps that.
The part that I am playing is a reduction of a whole orchestra score. So it doesn't have all the notes that the orchestra will play, but it has the notes that a pianist can manage to play when he's playing the solo piano part, which is how Rachmaninoff wrote the piece, for solo piano, which Steve is playing, and orchestra, which I am playing as much as I can.
And because this is the pinnacle of his work, and not just this chorus, it's the closer, this movement, just the first movement, with Chris will play the orchestra part on Friday night and on Saturday night. So I'm saving myself kind of for that. So this is a little bit for me to play like after I've been talking for an hour. And so we'll just give our best, and then this will help me get better for Friday. And we could bring in Myra's Square Grand and have it, because Rachmaninoff would have been 7 years old when that piano came to Missoula. Isn't that cool? So let me get some water, because I will be thirsty for a second. Barbie's getting her orchestra tuned up here. Yeah, tuning. What time is it here? Yeah, we're good. Okay, if you're watching us 10:30 and we're still playing, just hang on 1 second. It's about 12 minutes, so we got 13 left here. Okay, so I get these chords that remind you, but not really, of the prelude 10 years earlier. So, he even would use ideas from earlier life and say, well, that worked nicely. What can I do with F minor and C minor relationship? Okay. Usually I take my wallet out. You guys can fill this afterwards. No. I'm shutting off the sounds here. Thank you again so much. So, any questions? Did that sort of make a little bit of sense? And it was such great music. I can wait to play, but I can't wait to play. Does that make sense? It's so glorious. And you guys think, oh, we've heard that piece like 3 times. And I think, well, I've heard it 10,000 times. And I'm still working on it. It's just endless. Barbie and I and all of us enjoy, in a way, in a sort of, what's the word? Not sadistic, but kind of, you know what I'm saying, like we're gluttons for punishment. I know I can do better than that, you know. And so I tell my students, I tell them, appreciate all that you've accomplished and then aspire to even more. It's always deepening. And if it weren't, what Beyonce said the other day, if it were always perfect, there'd be nothing to learn. And so it's just the greatest thing. And so it's been so great having you in class. I had the feeling, I feel like I'm just starting to get to know you as a group. And we have just one time left on next Wednesday. And so that'll be it for this season, but maybe we'll do a potpourri next year. In 2 years, Ravel turns 150. What do you think? Yeah, so I don't know. I thought maybe it's too much of Rachmaninoff, but I changed it up so it wasn't just always, here's more about his life. You know, here's something more about music, because that's always the same. You just find the character within Rachmaninoff, and it's sometimes hidden within those great, luscious harmonies that he heard differently from anybody else. And so when he and Stravinsky were in Beverly Hills toward the end of Rachmaninoff's life, and they were sitting together on some porch at a hotel or something, they really didn't like each other. They barely knew each other. And Stravinsky was just, why did you stay stuck in that, you know, post-romantic thing? I mean, there was so much more to music. And then Rachmaninoff was thinking, well, I don't know, I could do without some of your stuff too, or whatever. And the only thing they agreed on that in this anecdote about the meeting, not maybe just that one time, but on that particular occasion, they agreed that they both missed Russia. They could never go back, never could. And you know, Chopin, I played that nocturne for you, 1836. He left Poland for Vienna, thinking, well, I'll come home after a few months or whatever. Well, guess what? Russia kind of moved in again and took over Poland for a while again, and it went back and forth, they say, between the Prussians and the Russians. So just what's the difference? Just a P in front of Russia and you get Prussia. And so Poland's a breadbasket, an agricultural prize, and Ukraine too. And so Chopin could never go back. He was in Paris, and he could write to his parents and say, if I go back, they'll yank my passport, and then 8 months later, they'll say, well, we're working on some things. You know, he could never leave Poland again. So he went to Paris, where his father was already Parisian and a French lieutenant and taught French to the Polish kids in the school that they were working at near Warsaw. So this is not a political event, but it is sort of, music is intertwined always, and I think music wins. Okay, next week with you.